this is something that everybody seems to have heard, that in the Middle Ages, children weren't really considered children. They were considered more like little adults. And this typically comes from this book by Philip Aurier, 1962, Centuries of Childhood, where he made this claim. And what he was doing was looking at the representations of children in, for example, art. There's a picture of Las Meninas, and you can see the children are dressed as little adults, and he kind of analyzed the art world and thought, man, they just didn't dress children like children. They must not have given them a real childhood. And whereas it's true that children did have economic functions in some circles, other views just find this just completely incorrect. And if you look at other bits and pieces from the historical record, this is a 16th century painting. It's called The Children's Games. And if you look at it really closely, you can see all sorts of shenanigans that children do now, more or less. They're smacking each other with sticks, they're blindfolded, they have hoops, they're playing leapfrog like games, they're pulling on each other. I mean, they're doing very non-adult things. They're hanging from what we would call monkey bars if you look at the upper building. There in the back. So why did this view catch hold? Well, if you look at how people of old represented themselves, these are some tombstones, for example. You can see the proportions of the children, presumably the offspring there, are very adult-like, and you want to look at that and say, well, man, they don't even look like kids. Did they not know their kids were kids? What's interesting about this is that it being a tombstone, most adults actually have been buried in unmarked graves. You need to know that, first of all. So think about who were marking their graves. This is a very wealthy family. This is a family with a shield. It's a herald. They've got Latin writing. And so when you think about how do wealthy people portray themselves, even today, when you see family portraiture of people with means to have family portraiture, they dress their children as little adults. We dress our children as little adults for weddings and formal occasions. And so this notion that we didn't, think of this picture now. Man, did we not know that those boys were little boys? Of course we know that they're little boys, but we do tend to dress our children up as little adults in some occasions. And when you look at fashion houses, especially those that cater to people of means that want their children to be set apart, you see similar themes. It's like, these don't look like children to me. These look like little, very fashionable 22-year-olds. The gal on the left have these beachy waves, that we have, and the little boy's hair has been flat. Look how beautiful they are. But they don't particularly look like children, do they? And they're not really wearing children's like clothes. Now, this generation, maybe the last two generations, we've gotten much more informal in self-representations. And maybe this has to do with digital photography, because as soon as digital photography became accessible to virtually everybody, which wasn't always the case. It wasn't accessible to everybody in the 90s when I started doing digital photography, but it is now. We're seeing a casualness, a humor. So just keep that little legend in mind that it's probably not true. They had children's toys. They knew that children needed special education. They knew that children were at special risk. Many children, upwards 40%, died before the age of 5, and they were vulnerable to household accidents, open fires in the house where the cooking was taking place, being hurt by farm animals. These were real risks to very small, little, delicate humans. So that's probably just a myth.